So there's been some discussions around Brett Pesce potentially getting traded if his contract isn't extended. Two teams that Pierre LeBrun linked him to don't make a whole lot of sense, but we're going to take a look at it anyway. So Pierre LeBrun recently stated that he thinks that if Brett Pesce isn't extended, that he's going to be traded, and the two teams he cited were the Edmonton Oilers and the Buffalo Sabres. Just taking a quick look at the roster, I can already tell you anybody that Carolina would potentially get to really have an overwhelming win in this trade is not available. So the Hurricanes are definitely going to look for adding scoring and sandpaper, as I have stated before many times. So when you're looking at that, I looked at the top 7 scorers for the Buffalo Sabres and the top 4 for the Edmonton Oilers, and here's the conclusions I drew just at surface level. Tage Thompson would make this team better overnight. Him and Aho as a 1A, 1B, or even a definitive 1 and 2 center situation would be great, but Tage Thompson will not leave the Buffalo Sabres. I guarantee you they will not move him. Considering the circumstances in which Jeff Skinner left the Hurricanes, I do not see him coming back, and honestly, if we're going to trade for a goal scorer, we need one that's a little bit more consistent. I liked Skinny when he played for the Hurricanes, but he was definitely on some of that every other season stuff. Have a 30-plus goal season one season, and then the next he'd be back below 25, and it's just, I don't think he'd be a good fit in the defense-first system that the Hurricanes have. That being said, he does have a thing that kind of goes under the radar, is his ability at offensive zone takeaways are really good, but the rest of his 200-foot game is lacking a little bit, so I wouldn't see him coming back. So here's one that I would like to see happen, but again, this is another one of those players that I don't see the Sabres giving up. I absolutely love Alex Tuch, and he is exactly what the Hurricanes need. Also go to the front of the net, go to the greasy areas, and score some greasy goals. He's big, he's an excellent skater. He has incredible speed, especially straightaway speed. If you catch him on the breakout, he's probably going to get on a breakaway, and he's definitely going to be one of those guys that scores a lot of those in a lot of those types of situations. That would be my first sort of realistic yet more than unlikely choice for the Hurricanes to try and get if they were to deal Brett Pesce to the Sabres. Rasmus Dahlin's not going anywhere, and it's not worth discussing. Personally, would not want the Hurricanes to upset too much about this defensive core. It needs to stay intact for the most part, even though we're going to lose at least 1 or 2 guys. We might lose Pesce and Shea both as far as the second pair goes, but you don't want to upset it too much because it's an excellent decor, and it had the most goals in the league from the blue line, so you don't want to change too much about this, but you definitely do need to add some firepower up front. Goals from the blue line need to be a secondary thing, not a primary thing as far as scoring goes, so if the Hurricanes could add some scoring up front and give up a little bit of it on the blue line to do so, that's going to be a net positive right out of the gate. Here's where you start getting into slightly more realistic looking trades that would involve Pesce going to the Sabres. Dylan Cozens. So his totals, if he comes to play in a system like the one that Rod Brind'Amour has, will definitely go down, but that doesn't change the fact that he could potentially add 30 goals and 60 points to the Hurricanes, which they absolutely could use. I don't see the Sabres trading Dylan Cozens, but this is the first player that I see, if it's just a one-for-one trade with maybe a little bit extra, maybe some picks, maybe a lower-end B prospect or something like that, going one way or the other, then at that point maybe you can start seeing something that's a little bit more possible. But as far as a one-for-one trade involving Dylan Cozens and Brett Pesce, that wouldn't favor either party, especially not the Hurricanes. Casey Mittelstadt would not bring the amount of goal scoring that the Hurricanes need, and I don't think he would fit well in a defense-first system. So I would just say that's not really even worth a whole lot of a discussion. That's why I think Alex Tuch and Dylan Cozens would be a little bit more feasible options as far as getting something that the Hurricanes need. But Casey Mittelstadt is something that we kind of already have with Jesperi Kotkaniemi. Player with similar results for a lot less than $7.5 million a season. So I would say we don't even need to worry about that. We have that with KK for almost $3 million less. Mittelstadt has a high side over KK in the playmaking department, but other than that, I think Jesperi Kotkaniemi is a comparable, if not a better player. Last one I'm looking at here, Victor Olofsson. I'm going to go ahead and say no to that one as well, because I think that he won't fit well in Brind'Amour's system either. He's not the greatest defensive guy. He doesn't have the greatest 200-foot game. He doesn't guard his wing very well in the defensive zone. He definitely can put a puck in the net, but it would come at too much of a net loss of what would come defensively. And if the Hurricanes are going to keep winning and keep being successful and keep getting closer and closer to getting over the last hurdle to get to the cup, they cannot give up the defensive acumen of this team. Otherwise, it'll all be for naught. So taking a look at the Edmonton Oilers, the Oilers are incredibly dependent on how proficient Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl are habitually. But secondary to those two, you also have Ryan Nugent-Hopkins. So let's not waste our time pipe dreaming. Connor McDavid is not going anywhere. If Connor McDavid ever wants out of Edmonton, it's not going to be much of a secret. If he ever decides, okay, I've had enough, he's probably going to go to the media and say it, or one way or another, it'll come out in the open that he's requested a trade. Secrets are not kept very well nowadays. Draisaitl, I think, is almost equally unrealistic as far as leaving Edmonton, but you'd have a better shot at getting him than McDavid, but that would have to be a very huge blockbuster deal. It would take a lot more than Pesce, and I don't think it would be worth it to upset the balance of the team entirely just to get Leon Draisaitl here, as amazing of a player as he is. I don't think the Hurricanes need that caliber of a center to get the rest of the way, but they do need something close to that. So this is where you can take a look at someone like Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, and potentially he's what you need. So first off with RNH, he's relatively competent defensively. Him and Aho could be a good 1-2 situation. They're almost interchangeable completely at any given point if you need them to do it, in my opinion, if you were to bring RNH over here. One other thing to kind of consider is that RNH still has some time on his contract as well. He won't be a UFA until the 28-29 season, so that is one thing to look out for if you don't want to potentially commit to someone like that long term. He would also have to waive his no movement clause for that to get done, so it also depends on if the Oilers management can talk him into getting moved and if he wants to be moved at all to begin with and where he wants to go. Zach Hyman, I personally don't think is worth looking at. I think his point totals are pretty inflated because he played with Connor McDavid. Just straight up. Zach Hyman's a good hockey player, but he would not be worth even a 1-for-1 trade for Brett Pesce. He would not be worth it. Those are just some basic looks at what could happen in a potential trade where Brett Pesce goes to either one of those teams. I don't think any of that's feasible. I think that that's strong-arming Brett Pesce's new agent, throwing some stuff out there in the media to try and get some leverage to make his contract negotiation go a little bit smoother. I still don't think he's going anywhere, but if he does, the only players that, like I mentioned, between those two teams that I would even remotely think is a realistic option that would benefit both teams would be Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, Dylan Cousins, and a real dark horse, Alex Tuch. And out of those three, if I could make a choice, I would take Alex Tuch 10 times out of 10. Because the Hurricanes need that big physical presence on the wing that can put a puck in the net. Alex Tuch would fit that bill, but I don't think the Sabres would give him up because that would definitely kind of set them back in the whole rebuild thing, and they're making steps towards really being a playoff team again, and they're not going to give up anybody who would potentially, move the needle in the other direction, and Alex Tuch is definitely one of those guys. Oilers desperately need to add some stuff on the blue line. They are incredibly deficient with defense, so I think the most realistic trade with them would be Pesce for Ryan Nugent-Hopkins. I do not think that would be a 1-for-1 trade, though. I think there'd have to be some extra going both ways for that to happen, but personally, that's just me. But if the Hurricanes are going to target somebody from the Oilers, I think that's their most realistic option. Now we're going to shift gears and talk about an old friend of ours, a certain particular Swede. There's also been a little bit of buzz around Elias Lindholm potentially returning to the Hurricanes. I think that is a great idea. So Elias Lindholm did not leave the Hurricanes on the best terms, and I know there was the whole storm surge making fun of the team thing when he came back the first time. From what I understand about that, I remember reading something about it, but essentially he was under the impression that the fans were booing him, which didn't make a whole lot of sense because the way I remember it, Elias Lindholm was a fan favorite. I really liked him. And the booing was being directed more at Bill Peters and Noah Hannafin. I'm not going to touch the Bill Peters thing, enough was said about that. Not only do I think he would be a good fit, I think that he would be the perfect fit. So Elias Lindholm was drafted as a center. And when he was over playing in Sweden, he was a center. And near his latter days with the Hurricanes, he was transitioned off the wing to try playing center, and he looked a lot more comfortable, and he was playing a lot better hockey. At the center ice position, Lindholm was using his reach and using his size a whole lot. He was buzzing the crease a whole lot. He was getting a lot done down in the corners, and when he was playing center, it looked like he was a lot more loose, and he had freedom to move and use his playmaking ability and all kinds of other stuff, and he looked a lot better doing that with the Hurricanes before he was traded to the Calgary Flames. Over the last couple of seasons with Calgary, he's been back playing the center ice position, and he has absolutely flourished. At times, people think that he's potentially someone that you could name as one of the top 10 centers in the league. And him and Aho at center would work out perfect, in my opinion. At that point, you're looking at the caliber of top 6 that the Hurricanes need. This is the type of deal the current front office likes to make, i.e. when they traded Nicolas Waugh to get Erik Haula. It can be one of those pieces where, okay, this might work out for the entire season. This might be someone we can extend later, or this might be someone we can move at the deadline like they did with Erik Haula, just for an example. That's all I've got for this evening. I'm working on a video for the draft. There's not a whole lot of consensus about who's going to go 30th overall, and I already saw one of the NHL.com writers say that the Hurricanes don't have any top-flight defensive prospects, and I'm pretty sure I just made a video not 3 days ago about a top-flight defensive prospect named Alexander Nikishin, but I'll get to that. So, if you like what you see, drop a like for me, comment, let me know what you think, subscribe. There will be a whole lot more good content coming soon. Take care, and bring Lindy home.